remember when my son started like, he was like 4, he was lying about everything. Like everything he said was not true. He would come home from school and tell us an elaborate story about some friends' parents, and then all to find out like it's completely made up. And so we did a little investigating into this, and it was like, oh, kids actually need to develop this skill set of creating their reality.
Oh.
If they don't have the space to create their reality, they will just learn to accept the reality that someone hands them.
Welcome to Honest Feedback, the podcast where deep truth meets bold transformation. I'm Goddess Brittany King, a pleasure priestess and a transformational retreat facilitator who helps women connect to their deepest truths, reclaim their pleasure, and awaken their inner power.
And I'm Lisette King, an emotional ninja and transformational coach who helps leaders release baggage, heal unresolved trauma, and step into their most aligned, purposeful lives.
We've created this podcast for spirit-led individuals just like you.
Seekers of truth, personal growth, and meaningful connection. Whether you're navigating life's big questions, craving more joy and fulfillment, or simply looking for honest, relatable conversations, you're in the right place.
Through personal stories, actionable advice, and transformative insights, our ultimate goal is to empower you to create a life that's overflowing with pleasure, purpose, and authenticity.
We know you're capable of incredible things, so let's make it happen together. Welcome back to Honest Feedback. Today, we've got a juicy question and an incredible guest, our friend Shadow Mike. And he's just, first of all, he's one of these real ones. Like the moment I met him, I knew that we were meant to do things together.
Amazing.
Like just an incredible human. And this question today is diving into how do we move through some deep religious trauma or feeling held back as we try to expand our life. Do you know anything about that, Britt?
Well, do I know anything about religious trauma as a PK? This is known as a pastor's kid. Yeah, girl. I've been experiencing it and growing through it. Funnily enough, a lot of people who happen to see me have some of that sprinkled in there. And as someone who deals in spaces of sacred sexuality, religious trauma is something that definitely pops up often. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing his perspective about it. How about for you?
Yeah. So, I've definitely had my own experience finding my relationship with God and it was a very wayward path. And I'm excited to dive deep into that as we discuss the question. Should we give him a call?
Yeah, we'll let Mike introduce himself. Shadow Mike, let's give him a call. Hi, Mike. We are so happy to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it is honestly an absolute delight. I just feel really playful inside, and I'm excited to be here and just hang out with y'all.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. I mean, we've been telling everyone, you're our amazing friend, Shadow Mike. And and now I find out you're Dr. Michael Simmons.
Dr. Shadow Mike.
Dr. Shadow Mike.
Don't you love it when you find out your friends have like fancy accolades and you're like, yes.
Yeah. And I feel like that is happening really frequently since moving to Portland. I'm like, oh, you're a witch. Oh God, you're like, you heal people's bodies from head to toe. It's like, you just never know what you're going to run into,
Oh, you never know. Well, in your own words, like share, how are you serving? How are you helping? How are you being a light in this world?
Yeah, so I'm a shadow work coach, and I got into this work as a former pastor, actually. I have always been someone who helps people navigate their spiritual lives, right? That was the proclivity, even as a kid. And as I got older and realized, oh, there's a lot of light shining in one direction within the circles of Christianity that I was a part of, it left a lot of shadow, right? People walked around with just dense, dark areas of their lives that were completely unexplored. And as I moved further and further into the profession of full-time ministry, it just became clearer and clearer. People needed a space to actually like turn around and look at what they couldn't see because of how much light they were focusing in on. So, or attempting to focus in on. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I do. I'm a full-time shadow work coach. And I have clients all over the world, actually, from Australia, Melbourne, Australia, to Nebraska. I mean, it's actually quite amazing. I have a lot of fun talking with so many different people.
Oh, that's incredible. And what makes someone come to a shadow work coach? If our listeners out there and they're like, I don't know, do I need a shadow work coach? Tell us what lights you up about shadow work?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Or
I
darkens you
love
down.
that. Yeah, yeah. What makes you feel like really icky and
Yes.
yeah. Well, I mean, your listeners are going to be familiar with, the term shadow, even if they don't use the word. It's metaphor. It's Carl Jung, psychologist Carl Jung would have brought this forward, expanded it pretty dramatically from what Freud had done. And essentially, it is the part of us that we hide, repress, and deny. So when people seek me out, it's usually because life has become unmanageable because of an area in their life that they are out of relationship with. They don't know how to relate to that part of themselves, and it's destroying their relationships, whether that's work, partners, kids, and that could either be because they don't have access to an emotion. So many men that I work with cannot access emotion around sadness, right? They cannot feel, they feel almost detached. And it's wearing down their more intimate relationships. I have a number of female clients who come to me and cannot access their anger, and therefore they really have lost access to their agency and their power and their ability to change their life. What I love about shadow work is it's not just personal. My bachelor's and master's degrees were both in sociology and anthropology. So I look at this idea of shadow as a collective issue, right? So there are common shadow elements that people in specific areas all carry. And so we don't try to just focus on the one person, but say, hey, listen, this was the atmosphere that you were steeped in for decades. So let's just acknowledge the fact that you might not know any other woman in your life who has access to their anger. So take a deep breath and be okay with that reality for a moment. And now we're going to move forward. Now we're going to step into, what does that anger feel like? Where do you locate it in your body? It's a lot of body work. People like, I don't know how to access my body. I don't know what's going on. It's like, well, we've got to build a relationship with it, like most things, right? So yeah, I think it's what would draw someone to seek out this work is typically emotional. There's oftentimes the emotional element that's the trailhead into that denser, darker forest of shadow.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I'm like, where were you on my path 15 years ago? Well, we all met in divine timing. And when we got this question, we knew that you were the perfect person to speak to about this, because we're coming in hot, talking about religion and like you being I don't know if you know this, I'm a pastor's kid.
Oh, I did not know that.
I'm a PK.
Wow. Okay. So you got that religious trauma, at least back in there somewhere.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Wow.
I do. And also many of it's very funny. I advertise it nowhere. Like nothing about my page speaks about religious trauma or religion really at all. And many of my clients come to me being like, so I have this thing. I was in church. like, how did you find me? I mean, like
it's so real, honestly. And I love, being goddess Brittany King, like how you've turned that on its head in such a beautiful way. I mean, I don't know if is there anyone in our, like, at least in the country, I don't know, like, is it possible to not carry some kind of traumatic, right? This kind of split that has come about through religion or spirituality? I don't know. I don't know that I've really met someone who is that detached from it. It's so ubiquitous in the collective that it's people come. It's like either by something that has actually happened to them, or by virtue of it them not having access to spirituality because maybe the generation before them completely left spirituality or religion, and then they don't have any kind of language or experience to work with.
Yeah. Well, we knew you were the perfect person. So let us dive in. Okay. All right. Hi, honest feedback. I grew up in a very religious household, and while I no longer align with those teachings, I still find myself in conflict whenever I pursue a new, more authentic version of myself. Whether it's striving for financial success, starting my new career, or exploring alternative relationships. I'm Polly. I keep hearing the echoes of my upbringing holding me back. Can you help me navigate this inner conflict and step fully into my true self? Signed, Fear of God.
Mm.
Damn.
Yeah.
Fear of God, I feel you. They got the fear of God.
Yeah. I love to maybe approach this from the developmental psychology perspective, because I think that there's something really problematic about how relationship with the God image, particularly in Christianity, because that's my background. And I like to use the phrase the common Christian myth, because when you say Christianity, it's like, who are you talking about? Right? Like a million kinds of Christianity. So the common Christian myth for me is a way of saying, there are common images, symbols, and beliefs that kind of hold people back from engaging their life. And one of those is this idea of fear, right? Like fear is both like something that you're supposed to cast out, because perfect love casts out fear. Okay, there's this Bible verse. No one knows where it's at. It's just in their bodies. And perfect love casts out fear. But then you're supposed to have this fear of God. And if you were to walk up to your pastor and say, excuse me, do you have a dictionary that would help me to lay out the different definitions of fear that you're working with? Be like, they don't have that. So people lose access to their fear, this signal that is supposed to actually alert you to danger that's needed. There's some level of like necessity that's there. And then they can't actually discern or decipher when they need to use it and when they don't need to use it, when it's over functioning and when it's like, oh wow, it's like really under functioning. Like you need to be a bit more aware that there's danger around you right now. Like you need to make a different decision. Other times, like, no, I'm just gonna hold everything back. I'm not gonna engage any of my life because I'm too afraid to be hurt, to fail. I mean, the existential dread of a God that might be upset with you, or think you're actually going to hell, or can send you there, but then also loves you. Think about that from a developmental psychology perspective. How can you hold a divine, all-knowing, all-powerful God image that then is supposed to love you, but has like perfect standards for you? There's even this, I remember when my son started, like, and he was like 4, he was lying about everything. Like everything he said was not true. He would come he would come home from school and tell us an elaborate story about some friends' parents, and then all to find out like it's completely made up. And so we did a little investigating into this, and it was like, oh, kids actually need to develop this skill set of creating their reality. If they don't have the space to create their reality, they will just learn to accept the reality that someone hands them. So this is like sin number 1 when it comes to like a very common Christian myth household, which is like, you shall not lie. I had a client once who said that her parents, remember her parents telling her when she was a kid that they would never lie to her. Now, that sounds great on one hand, but on another hand, it's like, but you mean that there is no space for there to be differentiation, there's no space for nuance or creativity between an adult and a child. And so if a kid is walking around feeling like God knows everything about them, right? Because God is all present, they never get to develop the ability to create their own reality because they can't experiment. It's right. They have to be perfect. God knows the thoughts of your heart, and you never develop the ability to think outside of that construct in that box. So thinking of this, for your listener who's asking this question, a huge part of the work that I would invite them into would be around exploring their image of God. There's a lot of areas we could go with that, but like when you feel this kind of resistance that he's like, okay, I'm not really involved in that anymore. Yeah, like you're not in church, but the church is very much still in you. And we might need to pull out some of those authoritative voices that are in a place where you actually need to take some authority and some ownership of your own life. So, I mean, that's a long way to answer that beginning of that question, but that's a big place to start, because if you can only go as far as your image of the divine is, right? Like you can't exceed that, especially if your image of the divine has a lot of very specific thoughts about how you live every moment of your day.
Mike, I am shooketh. I am shooketh.
You just explained her entire reality.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, that what really just keeps exploding in my head and in my heart was this is a developmental stage where kids are actually learning how to create their own reality. And what our listener is saying every time I'm trying to create my reality, I'm in fear. And because if you're not having that space to imagine, to create, to decide, and it's like, oh, everything's been decided for me. Like, I'm just like, wow, fucking like, what a vice grip.
Yeah.
What a vice grip to one's soul and to being. And so it's like, it's absolutely understandable, caller, like that you are in this place and feeling stuck and feeling like I'm fearful of God. And even just that image of like, if God's all knowing, but also holding this thing of like, this is what it means to be perfect. Yeah. Like, it's just, well, how do I measure up? How do I do anything?
Yeah.
This is an original thought I'm having right now, but
let's go.
In the Protestant version of the common Christian myth, you have essentially two camps. You've got the camp that believes that God has kind of decided everything, like you said, and there's really not much we can do about it. It's predestined. That's the word that's often used. And then there's another side of the camp that believes that we have free will, right? That God created everything and didn't just kind of go on vacation, but in some ways just kind of is letting us decide what we end up doing. It's all centered around where we end up in eternity, right? So God has either predestined some to go to hell and some to go to heaven. And then this other side says, God has actually given everyone free will, but a lot of people will choose to go to hell in the end. And I was thinking about how how problematic this is, like from an attachment theory perspective, right? So over here, you have this idea that God has kind of predestined everything. You don't really have a lot of ownership. You don't have a lot of agency. And in some ways, like you're controlled. So it can develop this attachment style, not just to like people, but just to yourself, to life, like to everything that feels almost smothered by control, which in attachment language would often result in kind of this either disorganized or an avoidant attachment style. And then over here, this idea that you have free will and you can choose every single choice is a moment is a choice. Yeah. Well, that would develop this sense of like, well, like God, where is God in that? Like what control does the divine have over my life if I can choose all of this? And that could very easily turn into an anxious style of attachment where you don't know if parent, mom, dad, divine parent is present. Like you're looking for signs of connection, but you can't quite track it because with the free will idea, it's like, how can you know, right? The devil disguises himself as an angel of light, but guess what? God does too. And then sometimes the devil looks like someone with a pitchfork and like horns on their head. And then guess what? Well, sometimes God looks like that too. So you just don't know. You don't know what. So people oftentimes, like quite literally, will spend decades stuck because every decision almost feels life or death in like the eternal sense. They wouldn't say that consciously, but as we all know, it's actually all about what the unconscious truly believes. And that's what's guiding or keeping them from taking that step towards the life they really want.
Mm-hmm.
My God.
I know.
I know.
Well, I'm feeling like, so your first question is asking them to explore what they think about God or their concept of, or the image of God.
Well,
How did you phrase it?
yeah. Well, it's maybe the image,
Mm-hmm.
the image of God. Now, this wouldn't be where I would start with most people, but if this was like the urgent question, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we might start there. And we'd work in some stuff around parents as well. Like, it's so often, right? Like it's kind of almost shot for shot, right? Your image of God is, I like to call God your second God image, and then your parents are your first God image. And so the second God image is created in the image of the first God image. And so what is, what was your relationship like? What did you experience? And it's like, it was almost hidden in plain sight for so many of them. It's like, oh yeah, my dad was exactly like how I think about God.
I'm
But
having
yeah,
that in real time.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's really hard to untangle that because people feel it feels transgressive to even ask this kind of question. It's like, no, well, God is just how God is. It's like, no, he isn't. No, she isn't. Every way, it's like any way that you've ever thought about the divine has been through an image. You can't think about God without thinking about an image. And like, look at the Bible. It's like, well, that's not a biblical image of God. Well, God is imaged as a lion, as a lamb, as a horse, I mean, like
Burning bush.
as a burning bush. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as a mountain. There's as a wind.
Yeah.
Like there are countless images of God, and that wasn't problematic for ancient people. It's problematic for an overly scientific like structure, like we can't go beyond the data kind of mind. It's problematic to do that, but ultimately a huge part of the work here for someone who is rooted and really connected to that, a system of belief, is that we have to do some work on their image of God. And so it is about like it, not just from a cognitive or rational, like what's a better image, like, oh, like a deer, that's sweet. Well, that might not be helpful. But then we actually enter into the mystical and the magical, and we start to like I ask them, how did you experience God showing up since we last met? And it is beautiful to see how people will. I had a client recently that it was well, I don't want to share a story, but
Yeah.
yeah, just like experiencing these animals, right, coming out of nowhere. Literally just like that surprised me. And if there is if there's an energetic charge with that encounter, get curious about it, because there might be something there for you.
Yeah. Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
It's still exploding in my head. What what I hear is that dichotomy of it's you and it's God. And if God
Mm.
has all the right answers, and if the moment you do something that is against what God taught you, then you're in the wrong. And so here's this person doing everything that they were taught not to. And how do they not internalize that wrongness?
Yeah, it's Connie Zweig, who's a Jungian, retired Jungian analyst, but writes some incredible books around shadow work and spirituality. And she calls this the ultimate double bind. she talks about how when it comes to like trying to do things right for your God image, um, there's no feedback. There's a broken feedback loop. So you do all the right things, but then like you get in a wreck. Oh, well, they're like, it's at least not a positive sign. So maybe it's like, oh, like, what did I miss? Is there something I need to be doing more? Like, this keeps happening. So I keep trying more and more to be perfect and to purge myself of anything that is not quote unquote good. But you never get the like, you, except for sometimes intermittent reinforcement. This is a term in psychology around emotionally unavailable partners, right? If you look up intermittent reinforcement, it's like, this is actually how someone who's emotionally unavailable will keep you hanging on. And so many people have a God image that is emotionally unavailable. So every now and then, I know, like every now and then, they'll get something, they'll get love bombed, and it keeps them going. It's like, I am now, like, I know I'm on the right path. They'll just be so sure. And it's like, yeah, you are, but like, this isn't part of it. Like, this is an internalized thing at this point, that you continuing to cultivate that same image of God. That is one of like, yeah, every 7 times you pull the slot machine, or maybe every 7 to 15 times you pull the slot machine, you get something. But guess what? You're wasting your life. You're spending your life at the slot machine rather than living, waiting for that kind of divine assurance and that divine download to set you free again. It's such a heartbreaking way to live. When I think about it, like, so many people, that's how they've lived their lives.
Yeah. I'm like, it's just like, oh, well, I guess if you guys are game, I kind of want to open the space. Like,
Do it.
would you guys be open to sharing personal stories about your own looking at what your God image was and how that was for you? Like opening the shadow of behind the light?
Yeah.
Let's start.
I'm all game.
We'll start with Lisette and then go to Mike.
Absolutely. So I have a really interesting story. It was funny because you're like, well, some people don't have well, everyone has religious trauma. And I used to think I didn't because, and I do. Well, there's a really interesting story. My family grew up Catholic. We're South American, Colombian. And in the late 70s, my mom went Jehovah's Witness. Long story short, they had her selling some encyclopedias, and then one day they wanted her to, the encyclopedias were a sin, so then they had to burn the encyclopedias. And then my dad was like, that's it, we're done. And so she got out of the church, and then I was born. And essentially, no religion at all shoved down my throat. Like, not once. I didn't go to church or anything. And what was amazing about it was I grew up kind of godless in a way, and I found my own way back to a spiritual center when I like started to do my healing work. I had like a near-death experience and everything, and I started to find my relationship with God, the grand organized design. I see it as the cosmic soup we swim in. And I fell in love with God as a concept. And I just feel this like all loving presence that's been there, the presence that is never an absence. And I have this beautiful relationship with it. And my mother, I was visiting with her, and one of the things she said, she goes, it's amazing. You're the only one I didn't push God down their throat, and you're the only one who still has a relationship with God. And it was so beautiful to hear her say that and to acknowledge me in that way. But yeah, same. It was an absentee parent that I was looking for.
Yeah. I love, yes, it really, like, would you say, I'm just curious for my own kind of data pulling here, like, would you say your siblings, like, it's been really difficult, still is very difficult to even go around the topic?
Yeah, everyone has their own relationship with
Yeah.
it. I know there's like some were baptized, some got baptized to get married in the church, but not necessarily. My brother went to Catholic school and he had his own weird stuff around that, and I would say probably my oldest brother still goes to church, but no one talks about God, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so they all have their own very private relationship with it. I remember the time when my sister was so mad because she didn't get to have Christmas growing up, and her birthday's on Christmas. And one day she was just like, fuck this, I'm having Christmas. And she like Christmas exploded in our house. It was like Christmas
Wow.
lights and all these things. And from that moment forward, it was like Christmas became a thing in my house, but it wasn't until I was like 12. And it was
Oh.
Santa and lights, you know. It was Santa's birthday. It wasn't about Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
Also,
it's
interestingly, your
oh,
name. Can you tell everybody your
oh.
meaning of your name?
yeah. So I discovered later in my life as I'm like looking up, you know, names and what they mean. My name has a Hebrew origin and it stands for God's promise.
Mm,
And I'm like,
mm.
well, how about that?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. The what is it? The grand organized design.
Yeah.
Yeah, the promise of that. I mean, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Mm.
Yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, Mike. How was your
Uh,
first experience looking at the shadow?
well, honestly, it was probably when I was pastoring and I was simultaneously working at a church that was all about bringing people in and like really kind of front door oriented. Like we want to get people in, but once you're in, it's like we are going to get what, we're going to build more numbers, we're going to have more people. At the same time, I was working for an organization that was doing a lot of shadow work stuff and like initiation retreat work. It was also Christian, or I would say like kind of the Christ oriented element there. But it was so different, right? Because you could swear and you could like step into like the deep, dark, icky stuff in your life. And I would like see people in my church who had been in church for decades. They go on one initiation retreat and their life has changed. Um, and I saw this time and time again. And to the point where, as a pastor, I was an associate pastor. It got to the point where I would stand up to preach on a Sunday morning and I would look out and see no one I knew. That was the last Sunday I preached, and I saw no one I knew because everyone that I invited on these retreats could no longer be in that space. It was uninhabitable to their life, a life that was evolving, and they couldn't stay in this small boxed in container anymore. Um, but like, I think there was many. I think for me, I was the kid in high school that got up at 5 a.m. to pray, to read my Bible. I had a Bible that was everything was underlined and highlighted. Um, I was the president of FCA. I had started a Bible study that met 3 times a week at my public high school, and I had a very clear like track record of how many people I had led to the Lord. I mean, I was this kid, and I had dedicated my life to this far before I ever went to seminary. Years and years of this. I knew the Bible, like I talked in the Bible. It was a part of me. And um, so in some ways, to be honest with you, it is almost as though like I had this span of time where I went to seminary and it became clear that I had to become a professional Christian if I wanted to really do this. And then to the time I left it was probably maybe 8 years of time that never felt right. It never really aligned because what I experienced here, even though it was young and undeveloped and really, kind of regressive now it would be, then it was helping me form an ego. It helped me form like a sense of identity in high school and or in college. And then what I think about God now, that, it's much more expansive. The falling away from that God image kind of felt like, yeah, that makes more sense now. I felt like I was in a bit of a dream state, living out this professional thing that was never mine. But I'll just add this part that my God image, uh, probably until about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, still had a massive problem with sexuality. And therefore I had a massive problem with sexuality. So the uncovering of that, it was only by virtue of moving towards my sexuality and then looking up and realizing, okay, I'm still here. God isn't angry at me. Oh, life's getting better. Interesting. That unfolding it's even where I'm at. Like, am I okay? Can I continue to breathe when I'm sexually engaged? Like, or am I bracing that fear response of something is not safe here? That's a huge part of this for me. And the God image that I grew up with was highly anti-sex, ironically. But yeah.
Gosh, it's just so, it's so interesting. It's juicy. Like, thank you, listener, for writing this in,
Yeah.
like, just for us to be having this conversation, because it's just bringing up so many colors and so many images, and like, wow, I'm just like 3 Bible studies a week in high school. Like, I mean, like, wow, like, you know what I mean? And just the parts that don't feel right versus the parts that do. And that, I feel like that really ties into my story about, I grew up, I'm a pastor's kid. So my dad was a minister, and we were Christian, and he started preaching out at Baptist church, so then we became Baptist. So it was like one of those things, like, I don't know, but like then we were, so that's what we were. And I had these experiences as a kid that just felt very different than how I hear a lot of other people talk about growing up in a Christian religion. Like, my dad's spiritual father, like the man who he was close to, who was like a higher pastor than him, like, this was a gay man, and he had a farm with chickens, and we would hang out at his house, and it was uncle, I won't say his name, but his uncle. But anyway, I was like, I was never told like being gay was wrong. Like, my parents drank on occasion. My mom loved a margarita. Like, they drank, and like we would go on family vacations to Las Vegas. So it's like, it's just, there was a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And I just remember there was like, also my dad's energy was very domineering, very like, this is right, this is wrong. I remember one time we got up to go to the bathroom during church, and he ended up beating us after, because he was like, this is wrong, and like, you were disrespectful to God, and all these different things. And it came out very explosively one Sunday morning that when he didn't show up for church, and his best friend pinch hit preached for him, it came out that he had 2 families and had 2 churches. And he was at his other church in a different state. And I just remember, like, as a child, like, I still can kind of like drop into it, because it was so confusing for me, because I remember first we all thought he was like missing or gone or hurt or something like that. So like, people were asking me for information, and like, I don't know if I had ADD or whatever, or OCD, but I just knew his license plate because I was a kid who knew a lot of license plates. So like, I knew his license plate. And I remember other adults like kind of asking me for information that I was like, am I allowed to say this? But am I not allowed to say this? And it all was very upsetting. And then we were shunned from the church. And it was like, hey, you and your family are not allowed to be here. And I just remember feeling really hurt. I felt abandoned by God. And I also felt like really fucking confused, because I was like, we've been here every Sunday talking about friendship and fellowship and all these other things from the Bible. And like, someone made a mistake or whatever. But like, now people who I've thought were my family don't talk to me. And so it was just like this. And I remember I was like, okay, I think I'm done with God. Like, and what you said about like having the God imaging your father, I was like, the more I understood more colors of my father, the less I wanted to have to do with God. Because I was like, my experience of God is vengeful, abusive, emotionally manipulative. There's not enough praise that you can give, but and it was all these really insidious things. And I just remember I was like, I'm done with God. And it wasn't until my own like healing and spiritual awakenings that I started to come back, and I felt very resistant to the church in all forms, that I started to discover God in nature and in trees and in yoga and in being with my body and in dancing and all these things like that. And I mean, what felt most resonant to me was claiming I'm a witch. And I was just like, this is my relationship with spirit. And it's been my own evolution to even use the word God, because I was just like, oh, I don't want to be judged. Everyone has these different images. it's, I'm not liberal enough if I'm talking about God, like,
Oh,
like all these, like, the stories around it. And it's been like, for me, just like an ever evolving evolution. But to like
mm,
look at the shadow of, I was just like very much like, nope, if God is this experience at this church,
mhm.
deuces, like I'm
I'm
out.
done.
I'm
Mhm.
done.
I just want to say, like, y'all, I haven't told you this, but y'all's usage of God actually has been kind of this like final stage of healing in that area for me,
Mhm.
because I hadn't really used it in a long time for the same reasons that you just mentioned, right? Because it
Yeah.
comes with a lot of assumptions with if you use it in certain contexts, right? Because like I can use that with you all because when I say it, you know that I'm not talking about some sort of really tightly wound structure.
Mhm.
Um, but for a lot of people, right, that word is highly triggering, and it's related to what we could call a God complex, not like I'm so big and I'm like God. That's how it's often used, but this complex of like associated beliefs and ideas, experiences, and traumas that really just kind of wait in the unconscious. And as soon as something related to that complex hits, that's what we mean when we say it's triggered.
Mhm.
And from a Jungian perspective, when a complex is triggered, the whole thing, that whole complex comes forward. And Jung would say it takes over the conscious personality. It's like, this is the only thing that exists. And now that complex is driving your life. And and essentially keeping you in this almost like zombie-like state moving through life. It can, at least, where you're like, yeah, you're alive, you look alive to everyone, but there is something that's inhabited, a very one-dimensional part of you that kind of split off and now has come back in, has taken the steering wheel. It can be such a destructive complex when there isn't a way forward. um, and I'll say a lot of times what people will do to find a way forward is they will cut off the archetypal energy, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
they'll attempt to. And like what you're saying, like, I don't want anything to do with God. People will say, "Oh, I'm an atheist now."
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And when someone says that they're an atheist, I'm like, "Yes, this is great. Um, this is a good spot. This is such a good spot to be in, because if you want to cultivate an image of God that is authentic and native to your soul,
Mhm.
then you're going to have to go through a time of separation from the old image. I mean, this is initiation 101. If you want to step into the transformational space, you have to separate from the old space. And that is often a painful experience. It's a death experience.
Mhm.
Um, and for someone who has been entirely controlled, entirely manipulated, and had no agency in their life because of their God image, separation from that oftentimes looks like them taking complete control of their image of God, which is that it is non-existent.
Mhm.
So if anyone's listening to this and either been in that state, knows someone in that state, or wants to even like pull into that label, go to where the energy is, because it likely has a gift for you if you feel like you need to separate from all that stuff in order to really start to build something new.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is just such a powerful conversation. So, for our listener who is struggling with feeling like they can't take steps forward, they're in the space of fear. If you, and I know this is such a, like, this is deep work, this is nuanced work, this is
Mhm.
personal work. And is there something that you would offer them as a place to start, to like start to ask themselves certain questions? Is there a meditation, a practice? I know all of us work in the space of transformation and not in the space of like, here's a quick fix. You just take a pill and it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that we can offer to this person, like, what would you share?
Yeah. It's a really powerful question. And it is so complex. When there's some kind of complex or massive amounts of stuck energy around this idea of God, it's nearly suffocating. I just want
Mhm.
to even like acknowledge that, like, it's suffocating, because where can you go?
Mhm.
It feels like if I reach out for support, uh, all the people that I'm supposed to reach out to would just tell me the thing that I've always known, but I feel like I can't go there anymore.
Mhm.
But like I feel wrong, or even like there's something like not good about going to someone who's outside of that tradition.
Mm.
Um, and I think it requires reaching out for support. Honestly, like I don't, when someone's stuck in that place, I don't think that there's a practice they can do, because essentially spiritual practices have become a relative compulsion,
Mhm.
um, to the overwhelming anxiety that they experience around their spiritual lives, which is their whole life, right? And so I remember going through during seminary, I went through the darkest night of my soul, um, and it was this. Go back to your question. That was probably where I confronted my God image. Actually, I'd forgotten about it because it was so big. But it was like I believed that God had a very specific plan for my life, and I didn't know what it was, first of all. But then I also like wanted to marry my ex partner, and it felt like I was going to do the wrong thing regardless. And I had to get to a point where I essentially said, I can't trust what's happening on the inside of me anymore. Like I actually have to surround myself with people who will tell me the truth, like
Mhm.
tell me goodness. Like the truth is a complicated word for
Mhm.
Christianity, but like that will tell me that I'm okay, that will be there, like that will ask me questions or just let me sit with them, that so I won't be alone. I think that that's a huge part of this is reaching out for support and getting honest with the messages, the stories, the ruminations, the intrusive thoughts. There's a word, OCD is kind of like a overused diagnosis, kind of like narcissism, right? And OCD, there are different kinds of OCD, but really it's just OCD, and then that OCD tends to focus on whatever you value the most. So if you really, really value relationships, you guess what? There's ROCD, relationship OCD. If you really, really, really value your spiritual life and you want to follow God, um, that OCD will attach, and it's called religious scrupulosity OCD. So you almost get to this point where you feel like you have to be perfect, you have to do everything right, and in that state, you almost can't trust what you're feeling. So uh, moving towards community, moving towards people who like know the inner workings of what's happening and can guide you. I think that's honestly like the only thing I've seen work. I don't think I've ever known anyone who's like, yeah, okay. I had a lot of anxiety that I was going to hell, and then I think I'm good now.
I meditated once and now we're good.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to speak to the poly piece of it.
Mhm.
The moving toward open relationships, like that's such an important space to find community
yeah,
more than anything. Because when you're doing poly, you're already doing something that's so fringe. And if you go to a pretty standard or stereotypical therapist or religion or anything, they're going to tell you that your problem is being poly,
yeah,
or being in a non-monogamous. They're like, well, that's your problem if you weren't in that. If you weren't doing that thing that wasn't standard, you wouldn't have problems. Like, yeah, that's just says the 60% of people that are divorced.
Yeah.
So my invitation there is, just seek out community. I know I've created a space here in Portland where people can come get some support being poly and navigating that space. But that's one of the foundations is you can't seek help where people aren't doing the thing you want to move toward. And so there comes this point where you have to lean into the self-acceptance of who you are, because the more I've healed, the more I've come to terms with my homosexuality. The more I've healed, the more I've come to terms with being like, oh yeah, polyamory is just like, that's how my heart works. And if anyone's poly, it's God. Loving everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
She's a whole
Yeah.
show, you know?
I mean, I love that you brought that forward, because that's literally like, that is the, like the thing that's hidden in plain sight. I mean, like the thing furthest from the common Christian myth image of God is monogamy. Like there, like you're talking about a God who literally is in relationship with billions of people. And, you know, a lot of like how people just commonly think about God as this kind of solitary man with a son, and then like a spirit that seems to kind of float around somewhere. But like, if we want to get like really clear about like the theological framework in like what is dogmatic, it's it's the doctrine of the Trinity. And that in and of itself, I have, as you all know, a version of it right back here that you have in your house. And it is three people sitting at a table, and it's an, you know, the icon of the Trinity is Rublev's Trinity. He was a Russian iconographer who created this image, and the original, it has the three God persons around a table, and then the original icon actually had a mirror in the table at the front, and so a viewer of the icon would approach the table. And when they got close to it, it was big. It wasn't tiny, it was big. And when they got to it, they could see their reflection at the table. And the invitation here is that there's room for you at the table, right? And so, like, even in my poly journey, it was like the idea of kitchen table polyamory. Like, I had a God image for that. You know what I mean? Like, that felt actually more true to love and to wholeness than like this idea that there was some kind of rigid, perfect way that we had to do things that was like wouldn't have been loving in my situation. It would have been very traumatizing for everyone. And like, this felt like, yeah, okay, my God image is evolving. That's a huge piece of this too. Like, the image of God has to continue to evolve. If it stays stagnant, it's basically like keeping the light shining in one area. And when you do that, the opposite tends to start to get pretty moldy. You know, and it doesn't get the same nourishment that what is illuminated does. And so, by virtue of this idea of wholeness and moving towards integration, our God image has to shift so that our shadow can be seen. If it stays in this one spot, we essentially will develop a very rigid, unlived life, the shadow, and then that will kind of end up, as we know, directing and guiding our lives from the unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I feel like my experience in organized religion was the seeing that or feeling that or experiencing that from those who are practicing a really stiff thing and a really big shadow, really big, and a beach ball experience.
Yeah, the closer you are to the light, the bigger the shadow you cast.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Wow. This has just been, gosh, such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah. Mike, if someone wanted to work with you, reach out to you, how would they find you?
Yeah, you can just go to shadowmike.com, and on there you'll see that it goes straight to my homepage where you can book a discovery call. So I do a free 30-minute discovery call. And one of the unique things I bring when it comes to this kind of work is I have clients that I meet with like over the long haul, right? Long tail. We do work over the course of time. But I like to create what I call journeys, shadow work journeys. And those shadow work journeys are, either in 3, 6, or 8 session journeys. And it depends on what somebody is like senses that they're needing to do. And the more sessions, the more sessions in the journey, you get a bit of a discount. But the big thing is I like to initiate people, whether that is, into this like deep area of their life that they didn't know was there, or they're just kind of dipping their toe into this, or like, oh my God, I need to do this. I didn't realize this was for me. Whatever the stage of life, like if you feel like life has brought you to some kind of threshold that you're trying to negotiate, like, should I stay? Should I go? Should I walk through this? Or should I just like put blinders on and pretend like nothing happened? Like, if you find yourself in that kind of wrestling, you're likely at an initiatory threshold. I love helping guide people through that and into whatever is next. So that would be like, if you want to work with me, let's do a shadow work journey, 6 to 8 sessions, and then we can renegotiate. Like at the end, we're like, okay, I think we need to do some more. It'll be kind of a collaborative process there. But schedule a free discovery call and let's talk and just feel the energy and if it's there.
Yeah. You've just been such a joy and light in our life. Like seriously, we met at a networking event and it's just been
game on.
It's been spectacular. We've been sharing each other's magic. It's wonderful. Thank you for being in our life.
Y'all, like, seriously, your work, your life, just I call your house, it's a womb, and it has transformed me every time I have come your direction. And here, shameless free plug, but if anyone is interested in going to the HUNA workshop coming up, please do that, because it is the best value that you can find. It changed my life and has brought me into my next season almost with like a sense of wholeness I did not think was possible. Love y'all so much.
And that was our word from our sponsor.
Yes.
I'm your sponsor today.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Love you.
Mike.
Wow.
Mike brought it today.
I mean, that conversation, I did not know where it was going to go. Also, love that we found out how gifted our friend was as far as like, I want to call them adornments. What do you call them? Accolades?
Accolades, yeah. We did not know it was Dr. Shadow Mike.
Did not know it's Dr. Shadow Mike.
Until today.
With Dr. Shadow Mike.
With Dr. Shadow Mike.
What has been your big takeaway from that conversation? What was something that just like hit or popped or?
The developmental stage, talking about how your first image of God, how it moves through your life. That was so profound for me to just discover. I'm like, well, I didn't think I had trauma. It's just capital T, middle case, lowercase, all the things. It's still there, and how collective we hold it. Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was beautiful hearing us all our first like turn to look at God experiences. But the thing that spoke to me the most, as a child who formerly used to lie a lot, the thing about the developmental about the lying, like I was just like, the understanding of that is staged to form your own reality, and when that is stifled, I was just like, I mean, TikTok, you can see me coming, like about control and fear and powerlessness and all these other different things. But I was just like, wow, that ability to create your own reality. And this is where the caller was finding challenge. And so just having that awareness for oneself of like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe this was part of my conditioning. And now that I have awareness about it, now I can take action to make different choices in my life.
Oh man. Mike is just
a wizard.
Incredible. Call him, get your shadow work done. It will have passed by the time this started. He's having a 2-week thing. And it's just like, yes, Mike, we'll be there. We'll be at the next one. We will keep you posted on those events.
Absolutely. So check out his links below, reach out to him. And you heard about his experience at HUNA. Yes. He actually has a very beautiful long form testimonial that you can check out on Lisette's page. But if you are interested in coming to HUNA, now is the time. It is a great time.
Yeah, we'll be having our Huna June 21st and 22nd. And like you said, this is the value we provide at Huna, the amount of release work that you'll get to do, digging into anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and shame, and letting it go and releasing a major limiting belief. And then the initiation that you get to experience there. Talk about an initiation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you are going to be invited into the next level of your life. So the link is below for that as well.
And if you have a question, if something's been on your heart, on your mind, or you just want to share with us, this is what I got from that episode. We love those kind of texts. We love those kind of messages. Give us a call at 971-895-4111. We love to hear from you.
And until we meet again, be honest with each other.
Bye.